Welcome to the next installment of the PhoneUX Protocol, and this time we're going to go back to the S20 to kind of compare where we are now to where we were back 5 years ago. So let's get started right away, and the first thing we're going to check is the ergonomics. And using the pinky shelf test, this is an awesome one because the S20 is a smaller phone than the ones I've tested, and smaller means easier to use, more ergonomic. You just got a smaller screen, so that's the downside there. But in terms of, the pinky shelf test, surprisingly enough, there's nothing in the bottom that's sharp. I could have swore I remember one of these models having a sharp USB port, but this one's not bad at all. Together with the phone being light in weight, it's very comfortable to use. And with the S20, it actually had a taller aspect ratio. So the screen is actually a bit thinner. I think it's the same height, around the same height. And the screen is actually a little bit thinner, narrower. You can actually reach across pretty easily. Yeah, you still have to reach the corner. You still have to move your hands, but it's manageable. And even without moving your hand, I could reach 80%, 90% of the screen. And it's lightweight, but when you compare it to the S25 Edge, they're actually around the same weight. I think they were exactly the same weight. So the S25 accomplished something really important here with the weight savings together with a large screen. But it's just, this form factor, this size is very comfortable. Another thing is that the edges are all curved. It has a curved glass and a curved back glass, and it meets into a thin rail. So that's the one negative here. The thin rails means you have thin buttons, and they're not as comfortable to press as the flatter buttons on the newer models. So in terms of ergonomics, I give the S20 a 9 out of 10. Next, I'm going to be covering the camera speed, and this is the time where Samsung had the notorious delay. Probably lasted a bit longer than this model, but this is definitely in the midst of the camera delay or the shutter button delay. So the first thing is to quick start it. It takes a bit. It's noticeable. You are going to wait for it. It probably takes 2 seconds to start up, or 3. So it is noticeable. So that was a quick tap. So if I were to do it on the home screen, it's about the same. And if I were to open it using the regular app, it is quicker. So the quick access to the camera is actually a bit slower in terms of startup speed, but you don't have to look for the app. So you could just, it saves you time in that way. Either way, they all have some startup time. The other thing is the camera shutter delay. This one has it, it's noticeable. This is right now where it's not hunting for focus and it's not looking around, and it still has a delay where my finger is off the button before it takes a picture. Now, if you move around, it takes even longer. And this is where Samsung kind of struggled in the past. They've definitely improved on it quite a bit since then. The next thing is that this actually has a high res mode because its telephoto sensor is a high res camera, 64 megapixels. And this has a longer delay as well. This takes longer than even the regular camera mode, which is expected because even brands like Pixel still have this issue where it takes longer. It's not this long, but it takes longer to take the high res photos. The new Samsungs don't take any longer to take the high-res photos, which I think is awesome. Not even the 200 megapixels take that long. I guess the one positive with the camera in the S20 is that you can still move around the modes to, put the ones you use the most together, and that's going to help speed up switching modes. But that's about it. Everything else has delays everywhere. So in terms of the camera, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Next, we're going to be going into the haptics and the input. So a couple of things here. One, since this phone does not have the AI features for the keyboard that the newer ones have, I switch it over to the Google keyboard, which is actually my favorite keyboard. I like it better than Samsung's. The only reason I keep Samsung's now is because of the AI features. The haptics, that they feel exactly the same as the S25 Edge. So you're not missing out on anything in terms of haptics. Basically, it hasn't really improved, but they're really good. So, how much improvement can you actually add or make to the haptics? Very, very solid, no rattling, doesn't feel cheap, and this is already a 5-year-old phone. In terms of the volume, It still has the top and bottom nudge or tap to let you know that you reached the max or the minimum. And you can go to the settings and adjust the haptics. Just like the S25 series, it starts in the middle and you can either increase it or reduce it to however you like it, or turn it off altogether. So for the haptics, I would give it an 8 out of 10. It has not missing a beat at all. Next, we're gonna go into the immersion, and this is gonna be an interesting one. So let's get started with just the speakers. So what I noticed is that the speakers they don't have as much bass, and the highs feel too high, too loud. So it's not well balanced in terms of like the equalizer. Even the S25 Edge sounds better, which is a thinner profile. So in terms of the speakers, it's a huge difference. In terms of the screen though, it's not that bad. This is still a high-res screen, or you kind of got to choose on this one. It's either a high refresh rate or a high resolution screen. I went with the high resolution, and it looks really clean, very crisp. Because of the aspect ratio, you have plenty of space between the bottom edge and the top edge of the phone. You're not gonna get that to that camera very easily. If you max it out, the camera's so far off that it's not bad at all. But yeah, obviously it still gets into the picture. But it's a very wide screen, and when you have it in landscape view, so very few videos are gonna even reach that. The curved glass helps to reduce the bezel, or the look of the bezels on top and bottom when you're in landscape view. So it does help to get you a bit more immersed. The colors are great, and the picture is very smooth. It's just a great viewing experience. Obviously, you're on a smaller screen, so the viewing experience is not going to be as good as a larger screen. So I will take some points off for that, but it's a great overall experience. If you're outside, the brightness is gonna be way dimmer. It's probably rated at half of the newer models, but it's gonna be enough to see what you're doing, but not great. It's not gonna be very clear. I would say it probably compares to a current mid-range phone. So overall for the immersion, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Next is gonna be the multitasking, and it's a mixed bag. So you do have the split screen and the floating window like you have with the newer models. You can move it up and down as you want, but it doesn't have the new 90-10 aspect ratio. Basically, that's as small as you can make it, and I'll let you know. When it looks like it's disappearing, it's gonna basically say you're gonna remove the app. So you have to leave it like right before it, and that's the minimum size you could get. But it's not like you tap on it and you switch to it in full screen. So it's missing that feature for sure, which is a huge one, especially with this type of phone, a slab phone. If you have a calculator, obviously the app, you can make it smaller because you could get away with it. But for other things like browsing or other things like that, not great. I saw that YouTube works well because you can put on the minimum. It's basically just the size of the video. It's still useful. So you still have the ability to open up a floating window, move it around, open it up, minimize it. X out, it has that feature. So you still have the ability to have 3 apps, which is great. But obviously you're missing a couple features. Another thing that, as I showed you there, everything ran super smoothly. There were no delays, no hiccups, no stuttering. So it actually still has enough power to do the multitasking, which I think is great. And in terms of the temperature, yeah, it warmed up a little bit, but it didn't get hot at all. But that's just normal, and this is an older chip, so I would expect that. So overall, for the multitasking, I would give it a 5 out of 10. And so now for the final total, the S20 ends up with 32 out of 50, which is a little bit lower than I expected. I think what dropped in more than I expected were the speakers and then the speed of the camera. I mean, I remember seeing that it was slower, but that delay was, I forgot how slow it was. So that's all I have for the S20. Let me know in the comments what you think of the score should be and your opinion on it. It will be an awesome discussion. And if you want to see future videos like this, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.